been 5 years of multidisciplinary interventions in Nigerian deaf communities. When we started, it was, when we started our operations officially in 2014, it was overwhelming knowing all the problems associated with deaf people in Africa. But we were quick enough to find out what the core problem was, which, looking at it, it was a problem upon which every other problem, was rooted. The apparent lack of communication between deaf children and their hearing families and their communities. That was the core of the challenge that we were facing. So all of our interventions were focused on how to deal with this problem, and then we found out that over 70% of deaf children, 75% of deaf children lacked language access between the first 5 years of their lives, and this was huge for us. But looking at 2014, the first intervention that we organized, which was the Nigerian Deaf Talent. It was an emotional one for most of us. People came around and they were like, how were you people gonna do this? Getting the deaf students of Fikata Orodo to come and display the talents. But that inspiration was so beautiful. And people came, people had some emotional outbursts. I did too. But that was something for us. That was October 2014. 2015, we went through some of the deaf communities, looking at the health implications of the environment of some of the deaf schools. And that was something also that led us to the discovery that became one of the core agenda that we are trying to attack, the issue of sexually transmitted diseases amongst deaf students who live in school. That wasn't something so acceptable by us, so we decided to take on a challenge of looking at the health of deaf students. But eventually it also goes back to the issue of communication gap between deaf students or deaf children and their families, because that informed us that when we found out that up to 70% of deaf students of that school that were screened had STDs, and almost none of them had been able to communicate that with their parents. We also looked at that loophole, that gap, that communication gap. I know that, there's a lot of stigmatization attached to such things, also sexual abuse and all those stuff. But for deaf students, it was something more. And 2016, we also continued with that agenda, trying to find the best possible way to attack the communication problem that existed. And we reached out to Lagos, reached out to Enugu, reached out to Ebonyi State. 2017 was when we were looking at the deaf literacy through indigenous sign languages. A whole new perspective came into being in our operations, and we are glad that up to today we are still talking about deaf literacy and also talking about the indigenous sign languages. 2018, we had the privilege of documenting the first indigenous community, and we are still proud of that till today. We came into 2019 with a whole lot of promises and also with a whole lot of expectation. But one beautiful thing that happened early 2019 was the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with the Nigerian National Association of the Deaf. I will not fail to mention that that was something that we have been pursuing, we have been seeking for the past 4 years. As soon as we started our operations, we started seeking out the Nigerian National Association of the Deaf for recognition and also for possible relationship. So that happened in 2019. Also, we got the relationship with the World Federation of the Deaf by being an associate member of World Federation of the Deaf. That was something that we also were looking up to. But a whole lot has been happening since 2019, which has been the 5th year of our multidisciplinary intervention in advocating for the indigenous sign languages in Africa. So we have been dealing with other sign languages, indigenous sign languages of other African countries, trying to pass out the message that every deaf child deserves an indigenous sign language access in the very first 5 years of their childhood development. And this is a core message that we're going to be running with in the next 10 years and beyond. We will not forget the level of advocacy that brought about the public online teaching on sign language linguistics, that close to 500 people registered, and it was not just fun for them but also an eye-opener, as a lot of them testified after that class what a knowledge that they really acquired. We want to continue to run with this vision, with these brands. We will also continue to run with the Beauty Beyond speech. So ending 2019 for us is kind of opening a new chapter, looking at to 2020 as the beginning of a new decade. So we are so excited going into the next decade with our intervention in and advocacy towards the development of indigenous African sign languages and the total development of deaf children in Africa. And one promise we have for ourselves and for the world is that in the next decade, the world is going to hear about African sign languages, indigenous African sign languages, over and against what has been in the literature, what has been represented out there, that we could say that are one-sided and also not favorable for the indigenous communities. And we want to appreciate the United Nations for the International Year of Indigenous Languages, which has just been ended, and also for the declaration of the International Decade for Indigenous Languages, which officially will be kicking off in the year 2020 for United Nations. For us, we have started our own advocacy for the next 10 years, and that is also why we have launched the TV series called The Indigenous Hands, The Indigenous Voices. And so once again, I invite you to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you will be getting notifications when we release a video of the series that we'll be doing in that series. We are also going to be asking you to go ahead and record 2 minutes video. By the time we start, you're going to get the guideline how you're going to do your recording. Just a minute video, or even less than a minute video, a few words, a few expressions in your indigenous sign language, and that's it all. And we take it off from there. We want to appreciate you all. We want to appreciate our volunteer team members who have been with us these 5 years. We want to appreciate all our fans, all our supporters, all the people that have really seen what we're doing as something. We want to appreciate you all. Nigerian National Association of the Deaf, we want to appreciate you, and all individuals that have really supported what we're doing. Thank you so much. See you in the next decade. Bye-bye.
I have made new friends, and I've had so much fun working with people who have the heart for the deaf community. And I trust that in the year 2020, my experience with S-DELI will be better than it has been for the year 2019. Thank you very much.